So War Tycoon is actually way better than a lot of Roblox games in terms of overall modeling. However, that doesn't excuse it from being very inaccurate in terms of some vehicles, and today I'll actually be talking about that, and I'll be talking about some other vehicles which were actually not given enough love or just overlooked and not given their true features which they actually deserve to be having in the game. Anyway, this video was actually heavily inspired by Rutik's ideas, so make sure to show him some love. He was a big reason why I'm actually making this video right now. Anyway, the first vehicle which I'm going to be talking about is going to be the F35B in this game. Everybody just knows it as the F35 Lightning because they did not actually give it its true name. Anyway, the main issue of the F35 is actually two. So first of all, it's not actually designed correctly in terms of its overall shape. Here's a picture from a very realistic game, Ace Combat, with how the F35 actually looks like. You guys can definitely see the overall difference in terms of camo, in terms of shape, and how the vehicle overall looks like. Another issue that the F35 also has is it is a VTOL airplane which actually does have a gun. As you guys already know, the F35B does not have a gun in real life, and the only way to actually give it a gun would actually be putting one at the bottom, which does somewhat interfere with the internals weapons bay. However, in real life they have been known to be making a lot of adjustments for the F35B if it does actually need to be having a gun. I don't understand why they gave it an internal gun if they could have just put a gun at the bottom. They probably just ended up not doing enough research on the F35, which to be honest is fine. I just feel like there should be some changes which the F35 definitely does deserve. Now the next vehicle which we have over here is going to be the F16 Falcon, and a lot of people might be wondering why. Well, there is one major issue which this vehicle actually does have, and that's going to be regarding its intake. It is actually modeled in incorrectly. If we take a look at a picture from another game which does things really realistically, this is how the intake of the F16 actually is supposed to look like. This is a pretty huge difference because the intake is just shipped incorrectly, and it's also not as big as it actually should be. Once again, this is pretty small, but once again it's a little bit of a slip up from the developers, and I do believe that this vehicle does deserve a very heavy fix in terms of this. Now, moving into the next vehicle which was absolutely butchered by the developers, and that's going to be the F15E Strike Eagle. This vehicle has a lot of problems, and I'm just going to be cutting this short once again. The main issues which the F15 actually does have is going to be the low quality exhaust nozzles. That's going to be the first thing which I'm going to be covering. The next one is the gun is actually inaccurate. It's basically kind of working like an autocannon instead of a minigun, which it does actually have in real life. The next thing which I also have to talk about is going to be the two extra hard points which this vehicle does also have on its wings, which by the way did not even exist in real life. Here is also a clear picture showcasing this too. Another thing which I'd like to also quickly cover is going to be the fact that its camo is once again incorrect. The camo that it's using is actually one for the F15C and not the F15E, and here is also a picture on the screen with how the F15E truly looks like in real life. This vehicle was actually done very terribly, and I really hope they will be revisiting it at some point. If they wanted to do an F15C, they could have just gave us the C instead of naming it the E and giving us pretty much everything incorrectly. Anyway, let's move into another plane. As you guys are seeing a trend here, the planes are the main issue in this game. They are actually done really terribly. Anyway, the next vehicle over here is going to be the Eurofighter Typhoon. So, there is only one issue with the Eurofighter, and that's going to be its camo. It's a little bit too blue in real life. It is somewhat blue, however, the way in which it was done in the game is definitely way too bright, and that's not how it's supposed to look like. This is once again just a small little detail, and I feel like just changing the color of the plane would not be much of a problem. Now, another plane which I'm sad to actually talk about is going to be the F14 Tomcat, and I know a lot of people are gonna want some love for this vehicle, so once again, making this short, the camo and overall modeling of this vehicle is actually extremely outdated. Here's a clear picture of how the F14 could have looked like. They definitely could have done a much better job in terms of its overall modeling. I'm actually not gonna be this much at the developers for modeling it the way it was, because it's probably going to be its first ever plane which was added in the game along with the Mustang and the MiG-29, so I'm actually not going to hate on this too much. And now once again moving into the final plane, which I think was once again done pretty terrible, and that's going to be the EA-18 Growler, but I'm actually not going to be talking about its features, surprisingly. And the personal issues which I do actually have with the Growler in this game is going to once again be its camo. It's just way too bright, and another thing which they have not done the best job on is pretty much just going to be the exhaust nozzles, which look basically nothing compared compared to its in real life texture. Once again, now moving into another vehicle, which is going to be the T-14 Armata. This time I'm actually going to be talking about the fact that it's missing one of its main weaponry, which is actually going to be its 7.66mm coaxial machine gun. And yes, I've done some research. I know a lot of people were already talking about this in suggestions, but in War Tycoon, I don't think this coaxial machine gun is even modeled in. Anyway, once again, we're going to be moving into another tank, and this is going to be one which I know a lot of people are very angry about, and that's going to be the TOS Buratino. I think there are a lot of inaccuracies that it does have compared to real life, and I'm going to be covering them very quickly. As we know, it does have exactly 24 rockets which are used for long-range attacks, basically freaking destroying everything in the distance. And my personal issue with this vehicle is how the weaponry was actually spread out. Like, for example, we have the guided missiles right here, which this vehicle I don't think is even able to guide its missiles, which is kind of annoying in a sense. But my main issue with this is that they could have just strapped 2 extra anti-tank guided missiles on this vehicle and just called it good. Like in real life, there have been adjustments which could be made to vehicles in the middle of combat, and I know this vehicle can definitely actually have some strapped onto it if they wanted to just give it versatility, but instead they just made the guided missiles kind of shoot out of the place which the artillery rockets are supposed to be fit in. It doesn't really make that much sense to me. I think they just tried to make this vehicle very versatile, which I do actually respect, but they could have probably done it in a better way by just adding an extra model onto it. Anyway, moving into another vehicle, and I'm going to be cutting this one short, and the vehicle we're going to be talking about is going to be the Sherman Calliope, and a lot of people did actually have an issue with how this vehicle was modeled, and the reason why is because they actually based it off of the jumbo version of the Sherman, but in reality the Calliope is actually just a standard Sherman in real life. Once again, it does not make too much sense why they modeled it the way they did, but these are some heavy inaccuracies which I personally do not like. Now the next one, which I already did actually talk about this one quite consistently, but I'm gonna be mentioning it the one final time. The Boxer CRV does actually have a coaxial machine gun in real life, and it does also have a coaxial machine gun in this game. However, if we actually use the Boxer, as you guys can clearly see, we are simply unable to use the coaxial machine gun. We only use the one which is mounted on top and the main cannon, which this vehicle does have. I feel like if they added one, it would make the Boxer just have slightly better firepower. Once again, this is a pretty small detail, but it will be nice if they actually took care of this and actually added it onto the Boxer. Another tank which I do actually have an issue with is going to be the Visels. I don't know why, but they actually did not give the Visels smoke launchers. As far as I know, they're actually not strapped onto the model as well. However, in real life, the Visels are known to be having smoke as a little bit more of a countermeasure. Once again, it doesn't make too much sense why they didn't do this in game, but it would have just made the Visels so much better and just have overall better capabilities in terms of being able to defend themselves from tank drones or any type of missiles from the air. Anyway, let's move into another vehicle. So I have actually been seeing this in suggestions quite consistently, but there are a lot of people which are asking for the BMPT Terminator to actually have a bonus additional firepower by giving it its grenade launchers, which it does actually have in real life. I'm going off of this from suggestions. I don't know too much about the BMPT Terminator, but there are a lot of people which are requesting it to have its deserve feature, which it does actually have in real life, as you guys are seeing by these screenshots. Anyway, the last vehicle in this video I'm going to be talking about is going to be the USS Zumwalt, and this one is actually pretty interesting. Whenever the Zumwalt was first added, it was basically the biggest vehicle in the whole entire game, and people actually respected this fact. However, the second they added in the USS Independence, as you guys are seeing by these pictures, the USS Independence is simply bigger than the Zumwalt. But if we compare this to their real life sizes, as you guys can clearly see, the Zumwalt is at least 2 times bigger, and this is also backed up by a lot of research which I have done, which you guys can see on the screen right here. So I feel like the Zumwalt should definitely be extended in this game in terms of overall size. I do understand that they do shrink a lot of vehicles in this game, and they're definitely way smaller than what they actually should be. But the Zumwalt is the main problem over here because it really does bother people a lot that the Independence is just much bigger than it. Anyway, for the time being, that's going to be everything I have for you guys in today's video. Do let me know in the comment section down below for some other vehicles which you think have been done in a very inaccurate way. Personally, I feel like they have done the best in terms of helicopters and ground vehicles. However, the tanks and the planes have really been butchered quite consistently by the devs. Anyway, see you guys next video, have a great day, and once again, thanks so much for Ritik for providing me with a lot of information for this video.